Okay. Hi, everyone. There's a lot more people than I thought would be on the lightning talk track. So I submitted, well, I actually didn't submit anything. People dared me to talk about something that I actually did, and what I did recently was changing careers. I used to be a sound engineer, and I got bitten by the programming bug, and I wanted to try and get to, well, where I am today, I guess. I think it's going to be I'm going to share some of my adventures, some of my issues, and some of the things that actually helped me understand and learn things as I went along. So a little bit about what I used to do as a sound engineer. I used to have a brilliant team of engineers that we used to do installation of studios, and we used to do maintenance, and we used to do pretty much day-to-day ops. You can imagine that we had something very similar to an epic, which was get a studio together, and we would have several little tickets, which would be, you know, hook up this, hook up that, or fix this or fix that. So from that to, you know, day-to-day operations as a programmer, not much of a difference. I used to love doing that. I used to just sit down, put an album in, and just solder like thousands of solder points a day. And think about how to interconnect every single device in the studio. It's very similar to your distributed computing, where you have several boxes doing something to some piece of information coming in. We would do that with audio. So you have some audio coming into a box, and it would get changed and go somewhere else. We had to think all that up front and design for it and adapt it and change it. I used to do a lot of live sound, and this is a little bit like all the people that are in the audience are subscribing to my stream, and it makes it easier to draw parallels between what was going to happen, what was happening. So we had several microphones on stage, and those are the clients of our API, and my API would actually be the console, and then we would do send something to a worker, which would then eventually send it to the speakers, and people subscribe to the speakers, usually by buying tickets, I guess. And also, I used to do a lot of recordings. I used to do anything from like little bands to big orchestral pieces with 50, 60, 70 people. These were extremely expensive. You can imagine paying 60, 70 professional musicians for a whole day, plus a venue of that size, plus very expensive equipment. And again, several microphones. You can imagine these are the sound sources, are your API's consumers again, and they go into an API, which would be our computer or a tape machine, and then we would have a database with a fallback database, because you don't record just to one source, because that's a bit silly. And I'm speaking from experience on a programming world where we just have one database, things can go wrong. And on all of this, you usually had really, really crap cold coffee. It was horrible. Even if you had nice coffee and you made the coffee, by the time you actually get to drink it, it's cold, because someone would come and ask you for help, or things got heated and you had to actually, you know, show must go on. And what I was promised was something much simpler with just a computer and a mouse and nice coffee. Okay, the coffee is better, and usually warm is not as simple as it's just a keyboard and mouse. You can just press dot and IntelliSense will do the rest for you. It's not that simple. Okay, why did I want to do this? I was working with games, and I would do a few sounds, and I would try and put them on the scene, and eventually someone would send me a snippet of code over email and go like, just paste this into whatever file. And I never liked doing that. I always want to understand why. I like to understand, what am I doing? What is that code doing? And I thought, and I still do think, that learning what the code is doing would help me as a sound engineer. I could develop sounds better. I could improve how I was processing them if I understand how they were used. Also, Unity 3D was the best tool ever to learn programming. It's so nice to just code a couple of things, press run, and you can press X on your controller and the character jumps and you go, yeah, or it jumps down and goes through the floor, or you're trying to animate the fan, and instead of going, you know, fan.x-axis.transform, you go fan.y-axis.transform, and the fan starts slicing the characters around the room. So you get to see exactly what you're programming, and that was really, 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 really helpful. Of course, I didn't learn this until like a year later, and I banged my head really hard against the wall until I got to that point. Right, so how hard can it be? I did not do computer science. I did not do A-levels on computer science. I did not do a degree. I was trying to learn this after work on my own. Okay, let me give you a little bit of background on something else. I used to read manuals. I was brought up, my mentors were old school tape machine guys. I work with some people that work with Beatles. And literally the way that they went up in their careers was, I show up to the studio, I'm making coffee and reading manuals. And once you read all the manuals for every piece of equipment in the studio, maybe you'll have a shot at operating one of them. You usually get promoted to tape operator, and you go from there. So I was actually studying pieces like this, which is from a mixing console, and understanding how the signal goes and what passes on. And I used to draw with Sharpies all the possible passing combinations. So when people start showing me about microservices and distributed computing, it wasn't that different. And when I say you need to understand where the signal is in the room or in the console or between pieces of equipment, I mean you really need to understand it. Because debugging that is a lot harder than sometimes debugging distributed systems. We don't have things like that. And I grabbed this off App Dynamics, so rather where's you. Okay, so mistake number one. I used to read manuals like that. That's for one of the consoles I actually showed on an earlier picture. And I decided to go out and grab that. And I literally just sat down, made the coffee, and started reading it. It was terrible. And after 2 weeks, I was like, you know what, I'm not giving up. I keep going. And it was even worse. And then I started talking about pointers, and I never wrote a single line of code in my life. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Someone suggested this. Okay, that made it a little bit better because it had some code to follow along, so I was actually trying to code some stuff. But if you know nothing about computer science and you're going, why am I opening a file stream and decorating it with a buffer, and what is all this? And then I need to close all this stuff. What? It's very, very, very confusing. It was enough to literally just put me off programming for a while. Okay. It was a big fail, and I honestly felt very, very, very stranded. I had cats, sorry. It's just people mentioning cats, so I kind of add some cats to the presentation. Also, my line manager said cats were cool, so, you know. Okay, part two. There is a lot of great information out there, and I think this was what I used, and I think it worked really well for me. It might not work well for everyone, but I think it's a nice set of tips to give to people that want to get started. This book is amazing. It's incredible. If you've never done computer science, I think it's a must-read. It's much smaller than the C++ one. And it actually introduces two good concepts, how processor works, how memory works, how heap and stacks work. And a bunch of concepts that I might not have understood at the time, but now when I do certain things, I unconsciously refer back to it. I think I use this every day of my life now. Another one that is great is Udacity. They have a lot of free courses and some of them that are paid. I did a Python computer science course. And basically on lesson one, they went, we're going to build a search engine and a web crawler. And I go, okay, cool. So you don't start by going, here's some hello world and blah. You start literally by going to the REPL and start experimenting with substrings and arrays and things like that. And actually, by lesson two, you're building a little list and dictionary of strings that you can go through and do stuff to it. By like the end of the first week, when Chris got home, I was like, I did a quick sort algorithm today from scratch, which was awesome, but I'll never do again because Link does that for you. But it's the feeling that you're not reading a book that will go, oh, hello world, and now you can do var x equals blah, and that is now an integer, or you can cast these two. It's the feeling that you're doing something that's actually fun and an actual project that could actually happen in real life. Meetups. Like Chris mentioned, they are super friendly. If you want to start talking, go to a meetup, speak to your local meetups. I've been, I guess, involved or following closely London CD and London.NET user group. There's tons of them out there, so whatever your passion is or whatever things you want to learn, just find the right meetup. They're usually super, super friendly. The steam of books. So books can be hit and miss, but when they're good, they're really good. They have this cookbook-style approach that you can buy a book, follow the cookbook instructions, you learn a couple of things, and then you have something that works that you can use as a sandbox to experiment. And they have ranges from game engines all the way to Elasticsearch to machine learning, whatever you want. They are going to spam you with emails saying $10 for £5, and then 10 minutes later you're going, I just spent £200. It's pretty dangerous. London.net user group, another big prop to those guys. I think there's a few on here, maybe? Yes. They have been very helpful, very approachable, a really nice bunch of people. And Pluralsight, which some people diss, but Scott Allen courses got me through my probation at Just Eat. I got in there not knowing what MVC was. So quick Pluralsight, Google, and in 2-3 days you have the basics to actually go on and do some work. So I've been doing tons of courses on Pluralsight, Elasticsearch, so I went there. It was a good place to start. It was great. It's a bit expensive, but it's well worth it. Your employee might actually pay for it, if you ask. Okay, things were going really well. I felt like every day I was doing amazing improvement. So then I decided I wanted to learn Objective-C because I wanted to do apps and some applications for audio, and audio people use Macs. So, but then if I'm doing apps, I need to learn Android as well because you need to have on both platforms. Otherwise, what's the point? C++ because I was really into programming and the DSP programming and programming audio effects, and that's all using C++ anyway. So I also had to learn Unity because Unity is freaking awesome, and also Amazon Web Services and ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core was coming out, so I needed to actually get on that as well. And also, I wanted to learn everything about Fourier transforms, filters, and DSP processing. And things went terribly wrong. I tried to do everything in one go. Pick 1 or 2 subjects, swap between them when you're tired. Don't try and just learn everything at once. Pick something that you really like and stick with it. This was, I think it set me back 6 months, probably a year of my life, trying to do all this. Okay, my real challenges, and I'm getting to the takeaway wrap state of the talk. People, everyone's different. Communication is key, not always easy. The amount of arguments that I see people having because this code is crap and that code is better, and this framework is better and that framework is worse, not agreeing on things, not agreeing on how endpoints should be, was one of the really hard things to learn. The other one is, processes. I'm in a cross-functional team right now, and I submit pull requests to, your team, and Raj's team at one point as well. And every single one of them had different processes, different CI builds, different pipelines, different. Some of them had PowerShell build scripts, some of them had Ruby build scripts. It was really hard to get all this and be able to understand and work between all of these. But understanding them is key. It might be hard, it might be overwhelming, but you'll get to ask for help. It's the best tip I can give. Unit testing. When I was introduced to TDD, it was one of the hardest days of my life. I got home and just slept because it was like my mind was completely blown. You need to practice. And I actually found something really cool. I found some people teaching programming by test first. And that helps people get into the TDD frame of mind. And literally, they would cover the basic types. They would cover string, integers, blah, and then go straight to unit testing. So every line of code they would do would be test-driven. And that was an amazing course. And probably if I get someone to try and teach programming, I'll do the same thing. It'll be my test subject. Hello. And frameworks with a lot of baggage, and I'm looking at .NET. Is there anyone that works for Microsoft in here? Ian Cooper had a bit of a rant on Twitter a while ago, and he went on an awesome conversation comparing .NET to Buffy, and how you had to actually change, he had to change the characters to get new people into the show, and had to change the storyline to, reboot constantly to get people into it. And he's absolutely right. I remember asking what task.return was. I remember Raj coming to me and was like, you shouldn't be using .return. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Some people actually explained to me the task pattern by saying, the previous one was awful. And I was like, that is not really helpful. It's hard to have people that can come to you, sit down, and explain to you the basics, or explain to you how something is supposed to be used and work. Thanks, Raj, by the way. Giving you a lot of plugs today. Takeaways. there are amazing online courses that will get you hands-on and working on interesting projects, not just random strings and random stuff that never gets anywhere. Actual sandbox projects. Do not read spec books. Do not go and buy C++ reference books. Don't. Pick your technology. Don't try and learn everything at once. Get on Git or any distributed version control system as soon as you can. And you mentioned that earlier. It's essential these days for any work or even open source contributions. As soon as you feel comfortable with the language, get used to unit testing. And go to conferences and meetup. People are surprisingly super friendly and helpful, including open source projects contributions as well. Do I have anything else? Oh, yes. And start suggesting that your juniors mentor as soon as possible, even if it's onboarding other people to your processes. Get them actually trying to explain to other people, because when you explain something to someone else, that's when questions start showing up, and that's when you really realize your gaps in your knowledge. So, oh, another one. When teaching a newbie, remember that they might never come across whatever it is that you're showing them. The first time I saw lambdas, I had a heart attack. I had no idea what was going on. And people just went, it's just a simple lambda. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I remember teaching someone about an arrays, and they were like, why can't I just go array H, because I went an H, and I had to explain that they need to put the index, and that was actually quite hard to explain. So, they might have never come across something like that. And yes, thank you. Any questions for me or any of the Lightning Talks presenters? No? Okay. I guess I'll let you guys go and get some food from the buffet.